One. What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining me on this episode of Survival Horror Podcast. It's a newly established podcast here on the Nerd Space Games channel. And today I am joined by my really good friend, RapidCrafter. You guys probably know this guy. This guy talks everything and anything
It
Resident
is going
Evil.
good. How is
Rapid,
it going,
how's it going,
man?
my friend?
I'm excited.
You know, chilling. Me too. We got a lot of stuff to cover on this episode. We're gonna fool around, talk about some random stuff too, whenever we get into the greedy stuff. But just wanted to kind of check in with you. I wanted to see what's been going on with you. How's the channel coming along? Do you have any little hints about what might be coming in the future for the Rapid Crafter channel?
As of next month.
Nice man. Good stuff. All right, so it looks like we got some people kind of slowly rolling in. Give it a little bit longer.
Tune in. Welcome.
All right, hold on. Just checking some stuff. Make sure quality-wise.
Yeah, quality looks really good so far.
All right, cool. All right, awesome, guys. So let's go and just jump straight into it. Like I said, we got a lot of different types of survival horror news going on. If you guys also, this is our first time doing a live show. So you're going to see us do some mishaps. You're going to see us do some mess ups. Quality wise, let us know if any audio issues come up. If you see any audio issues, anything going on, let us know. We'll get that fixed right away and we'll kind of jump straight into it. But yeah, it is our first ever live show. I don't know, Rapid, have you ever done a live show before, actually? Oh, dang. Okay, well, I'm with a veteran here. So I'm a newbie when it comes to live streams. So hopefully I figured this out pretty good. Again, if there's any audio issues, thank you, man. Any audio issues, just let us know. We'll get it fixed out. I'm still kind of working things out. But let's just jump straight into the news. I want to get your opinions on all of these different things we're going to talk about. But before we talk about the news itself, if you guys want, hit up those comments. Let us know if you guys have any questions for us. We'll go over that at the end of the show. Any supers we'll cover immediately as soon as we get them as they come in. But the questions, if you guys have anything, rather it be personally, if you want to learn more about Rapid, if you want to learn more about me, about some of our favorite stuff, make sure you ask us those questions in the comments. We'll cover them. We'll cover them during the video. And then, of course, if we missed any that we missed at the end of this video, we'll cover maybe next week on next episode. But we do have some questions from the last episode that we'll cover at the end of the video as well. So we'll kind of group them all together there. But let's just jump straight into the news. So the first thing I want to talk about, I want to go over to Alan Wake 2. And actually, I just want to start off by talking to you, Rapid. Alan Wake, have you ever played the original Alan Wake game?
It's crazy because a friend actually brought this first played it, and I was like, I bought the game, but I've yet to touch it. And I bought it because I heard Alan Wake 2 was, or the first one was so beloved. And so I bought it, but I haven't played it yet. But I've seen like gameplay over the years and whatnot. So I know it's like a really beloved game, and especially seeing the reception for the second game get announced. But yeah, I plan to play it anytime but before October is my goal before the second one comes out.
Man, you got to get into it,
I know,
man.
because everyone keeps saying good things about it. I'm like,
yet.
I'm really missing. It's like one of
to.
the bigger horror games, because usually I played like all the big horror games. I think that's one of the bigger ones that like I need to play. It's definitely soon.
Yeah, dude, it's a crazy good game. Honestly, one of the biggest pioneers of survival horror. It takes like a Alone in the Dark kind of, pun intended, I guess, but Alone in the Dark kind of feeling, and kind of like elevate it to a whole new level with a whole new mechanics and stuff. Don't play the remaster version.
Okay, good to know.
It's trash. So make sure if you can find a way to get that original copy, play an older version of that game. That's probably the way to go. But nice. I absolutely love Alan Wake, so I'm excited for the second game. But let's talk about Alan Wake 2 as we got a couple different news regarding Alan Wake 2. Some good, some not so good, but maybe not as bad as it sounds. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Alan Wake 2 was delayed by 10 days. It is delayed from October 17th to October 27th now. And I'll get your opinions on in just a second, but for me personally, I think it was probably the right call because, you know, Spider-Man is coming out like 3 days after its original release date. October 17th was Alan Wake 2. Spider-Man was coming out October 20th. Plus, you got Super Mario Wonder. I'm not a fan of the Mario games, but I know there's a lot of people that are. So that was coming out around the same time. Mirage, Lords of the Fallen were coming out a few days before that. But let me know, how do you feel about the Alan Wake 2 delay, about it getting pushed back to the 27th? And what are your thoughts about, do you think it was the right decision?
Well, especially with like how quality, and also like the whole point of a sequel is to top the original, which is very hard to do in a lot of cases. But in this case, 10-day delay could be for like some extra polishing, but also like you said, Spider-Man 2 is like a huge game that's, if not one of the biggest games this year that people are excited for. So
yeah, so I should have got the Twitter post ready before we went live, but so I think they actually said that Alan Wake 2 was specifically delayed. Their reasoning was to allow gamers to experience all the games that are releasing in October, because they said that there's a lot of good games coming out in October, and they said by changing the release date, it opens the door for gamers to experience more games. So I think they did come out kind of, sort of admit to the reasoning why they made that delay was because of what other games were coming out. But the funny thing is that it's actually now coming out 2 days after Alone in the Dark. So now we're getting Alone in the Dark on October 25th, and we're getting Alan Wake 2 on October 27th, literally 3 days away from each other. Two
which
days.
is crazy, because Alone in the Dark's another one I've yet to play. But the fact that a lot of people might end up buying both games at the same time, but usually people kind of pick one or the other. So it's a pretty bold move for sure. But I mean, I'm wishing the best for all the games. I hope they're both successful. I think they both deserve it, as long as the games are quality and live up to the hype.
All right, so we are having some audio problems with your voice, it looks like. So we're going to figure out what's going on there.
Is it cutting out, chat, or is it glitching out?
I'm not hearing anything yet. I haven't heard anything. Okay. Oh, it's good now, apparently. All right, word. Okay. All right. Back to where we were. So yeah. Alone in the Dark, actually, you might have touched on this while I was figuring out the technical difficulties, but so Alone in the Dark, actually, apparently, that game was the one that actually inspired the original Resident Evil 1, if I'm not mistaken, right? And you would probably know more about this because you talk nonstop about Resident Evil, which I love. But that it was initially the inspiration for what became the Resident Evil game we got, right? Like, I know Resident Evil 1 was originally being made before Alone in the Dark kind of came out. It was around the same time. But they saw Alone in the Dark release, and then they kind of tweak things to kind of make it
because I believe
camera angles that we got, right?
Well, me honest, but I'm pretty sure the first Resident Evil was supposed to be like almost like a not Alone in the Dark. There was another game too. It was like Home Sweet Home or something like that, and it was like this. I don't. It was been a while since I read the story, but I think it was it was like a really old game, and I think it was essentially like a remake of that, but then somehow got turned into Resident Evil 1, and then Alone in the Dark, and then Home Sweet Home ended up being the inspirations for the first game. And the first game was supposed to be first person originally, which is crazy because people give RE7 so much, for being first person. That was like the first, Shinji Mikami originally, I think, it was supposed to be, first person, which is crazy because that would have drove the series in a completely different direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we would have never got like the Silent Hill game. We wouldn't have got any of those like fixed camera angle games that a lot of us old school survival horror fans love. If it wasn't for Resident Evil seeing what Alone in the Dark did and kind of like main tweaks to that. We were also supposed to get like a cyborg type character in
Yeah.
the original Resident Evil game. Do you remember that?
Yeah, because Resident Evil 1 popularized,
times,
especially
good
like
times.
fixed camera. Like to me, whenever I think of the first game, the first fixed camera angle to come to mind is the hallways where the dogs jump through the windows. Like easily one of the most iconic moments. So Resident Evil just for its time is so crazy, like how much it
Absolutely.
actually impacted the industry and other horror games and games to come after that.
The funny thing is people who are in the chat, Dark Attack, he was saying that he thinks that there should be a remake for Home Sweet Home actually, which I don't know. I probably should have included it. I did a video last week about like the game, or I think it was last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, about which survival horror games I feel like need a remake right now. That wasn't on the list, and I feel kind of bad leaving that out since that kind of was the inspiration behind the Resident Evil games. But yeah, Sweet Home was apparently supposed to be the original inspiration behind what Resident Evil, and then Alone in the Dark was the inspiration behind like the changes to the fixed angle,
which is wild. Like it's so crazy to think about.
Yeah. And yeah, 3-pick, we are going to talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't know if my boy Rapid here has played that yet, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. We do have that on the agenda, absolutely.
So we should get a remake. Remake it Home Sweet Home. Oh, I think he was saying like RE1 was essentially supposed to be a remake of Home Sweet Home.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I don't know if we'll get that one, a remake of that game though. But yeah, Parasite Eve, that's what I want. But okay. So also we were talking about Alan Wake 2. Something else that was announced when it came to Alan Wake 2 is that we're actually going to see more gameplay footage on Alan Wake at Gamescom on August 22nd, which airs at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And this time it's going to focus more on Alan Wake himself as he's in the other world, the dark world. So we're going to get some more gameplay footage of that. Have you seen any of the gameplay footage that we've already got? I think the only gameplay we've seen so far was on Saga Anderson.
Yeah, everything they put out so far.
Have you seen any gameplay footage at all yet?
Looks really good too. Like I'm excited. I haven't even played the first one and I'm excited. Looks good.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
Definitely play it. Probably next month. And then next month
it comes out.
I'll end up talking about it. But yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
Nice. But yeah, so Alan Wake 2 is going to focus on the next gameplay footage that we're going to get at Gamescom. It's going to focus on Alan himself, which is nice. But also the director said something very interesting, and you might like this part. The director of Alan Wake 2 said, and I quote, "Alan Wake 2 takes cues from Resident Evil and how to make players feel more vulnerable." And this is from the director themselves. So obviously they're taking some similarities and taking some inspiration behind Resident Evil 2 remake and Resident Evil 4 remake and like all the modern Resident Evil games and bringing them into Alan Wake 2. So does that inspire you to kind of like want to jump into Alan Wake 2 even more? I know you already said that you're already really excited for it, but does that kind of push you towards
the only thing? Because
or how do you feel about this?
My biggest concern is the vulnerable part, because horror like developers and directors kind of take this two ways. So there's one way where I hope they mean they're taking the best parts of like RE7 or the remakes, where at least like 2 remake, where you know, resource management, you really like, it really feels like a survival horror game, which is, I feel like, which I'll get to later, but I feel like a lot of horror games that are considered survival horror aren't actually survival horror, because, you know, you have so much ammo and resources and it just becomes more like actiony. And then there's the other side where a lot of developers say, you know, we want to make the player feel vulnerable. And what they mean by that is just strip everything away from you, take away all your weapons, everything you have, to where it just becomes a stealth like simulator, or like a walking, you know, sneak around type thing, which can be good if it's implemented correctly. Like once again, Resident Evil 7 had minor elements of that, but it wasn't overdone. So I'm hoping when he says that, he actually means like, you know, the best parts about survival horror, rather than just, we're going to take away your guns, your ammo, your flashlight, everything, and you just have to walk around and stick around in the dark for, you know, 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's the kind of survival horror experiences I like. So I hope And this is actually going to come up later on too when we get to our poll question that I posted earlier in the week. But yeah, like there's specific games that didn't have some of the traits to be a survival horror game that a lot of people still consider a survival horror game, and we're going to talk more about that. But yeah, there's some differences in my opinion, and I know a lot of content creators agree and disagree what actually makes a survival horror game. But I'm hoping that they kind of learn from like Resident Evil 2 remake when it comes to trying to recreate the survival horror elements for Alan Wake 2 versus, and I know the pitchforks and torches are going to come out when I say this, but I don't want them to lean towards the Resident Evil 4 remake. I am so sorry if any of you guys are like pissed I am saying that right now.
I agree with that though. I know exactly what you mean. I do agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really hope when they said that they're going to take inspiration from modern Resident Evil games, it's going to be Resident Evil 2 versus Resident Evil 4 remake. So we'll see how that goes though. But we're going to see some more gameplay footage on August 22nd at 2 p.m. Eastern. So I'll be tuning in for that. We'll probably cover on the next episode of Survival Horror. But yeah, so just keep a lookout for that. But let's move on to the next topic. So another game that's actually releasing in a few days. I already pre-ordered it. I can't wait to get my hands on it. But that is Fort Solace. Now, I think it's classified as a survival horror. I'm not 100% sure on that. But basically, it gives me kind of Dead Space vibes, sort of. So I kind of wanted to reach out to you. Have you heard anything about this game? Are you excited for it? Are you picking it up? What's your
It's like one of the very few survival or horror games that I like really haven't kept up to date on at all. I saw the first initial trailer, which I believe was at, I don't exactly remember where they first wherever they first revealed it. That's where I saw it. But other than that, I don't know too much about it. So is it like third person survival horror, action horror?
It's so it is third. It's very similar to Dead Space from the kind of presentation they're giving us. Surprisingly, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I don't think we've seen any we've seen gameplay footage. They posted a 14-minute gameplay teaser a few days ago actually, but I don't remember seeing any kind of combat in that gameplay teaser, and I was kind of surprised because they are trying to sell this game. It was 14 minutes of gameplay. And we actually didn't get any kind of combat in that gameplay. So I was shocked when I saw that. But basically, it's a third-person survival horror setting in space where basically you play as, I believe the character is Jack Leary, and he's an engineer. And I believe they're on Mars, and he's going to an abandoned station and seeing what's going on because they lost contact with the people there. And then, you know, just like any survival horror game, it pretty much all hell breaks loose. It seemed like there was a lot of puzzle solving, which I really like. That's one of my favorite traits of a survival horror game. Yeah, and it has like the voice acting crew behind it looks amazing because it has the voice actor for Joel in the Last of Us games and also the voice actor for Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption 2. So they have a stellar cast behind this. But yeah, if you haven't checked it out, go watch some trailers on this, man. You should check this out, Rapid, because honestly,
I love Dead Space.
Did you play
Dead Space
remake
a whole different ballpark. Love Dead Space. So I'm intrigued now because simply just because it's sci-fi, and sci-fi games alone are just like Dead Space. Dead Space is to me one of the best sci-fi games out there. Period.
Yeah, it looks good. I'm excited. I'm also keeping my expectations kind of low because, again, we haven't seen much combat in the gameplay at all, which concerns me. Whenever I don't see combat in a survival horror game, just seeing like how that plays out makes me a little bit nervous. But the visuals looks fantastic. The voice crew behind the cast behind the game looks fantastic. So hopefully it's as good as I want it to be, but I'm going to keep my expectations low. But I'm picking that up,
yeah, the voice cast alone hypes me up. Troy Baker, and I forgot who the voice actor for. I forgot his name.
Troy Baker, and I'm drawing a blank on Arthur Morgan's voice actor.
Like Roger Clark, that's what it is.
I don't remember. That's it. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, very.
So both of them are
very
back,
talented voice actors
both
too.
Both of them in the same game. So yeah. So it looks good. Hopefully it's as good as I hope it's gonna be. But let's move on to another game that's actually releasing a week after For Solace, another survival horror experience. This one I know you heard of because the original one of this game was a kind of a love letter to the Resident Evil 2 game, and that is Daymare 1994.
Yeah, I played through
Sandcastle.
half
I
of
know
it,
you heard
never
of this game,
finished
right?
it, but yeah, like whole reason I got into it was, you know,
That's
basically
fair.
like you said, a huge love letter to RE2 fans. To kind of, it was more so to give fans a little more of what they wanted from Resident Evil, just something a little different. Um, and it seems like the sequel really is going to take that entire foundation and kind of go a little bit more in their own creative direction while maintaining what people love so much about the first game, and also hopefully improving everything in the first game that maybe people didn't like as much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And that's why I'm excited about it. Excuse me. So the original Daymare, I
Yeah.
think you said you only played about halfway through it. Um,
Yeah.
it's clunky. It's not a, triple A title at all. It was just a love letter to fans. It was just a fun game for anybody that was like a huge fan of Resident Evil. This game was just taking all the inspiration behind Resident Evil 2 and kind of made their own game. And I found it fun. It was fun enough. The gameplay was rough. The story, especially near the end, I'm not going to do spoilers in case any of you guys want to go check it out, but the spoilers was rough. Or not spoilers, sorry. The ending was rough. But I have a lot of expectations for this game because now that the studio kind of built up, now that they're kind of going their own path, they are learning from what they did with the original Daymare. It seems like that this game is going to have its own identity now, and I'm excited for that. I know I keep bringing up Dead Space, but this reminds me of Dead Space with all the different like mechanics that you have, all the different abilities,
Yeah.
like freezing like enemies and stuff like that. So it looks extremely exciting. I can't wait to get my hands on it. And it's not a full price game. I think it's
Oh, wow.
$35 right now, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, 35, 39, somewhere around there. I had that pre-ordered as well. So, I'm going to be playing the hell out of these
Yeah,
survival
Daymare.
horror
Yeah,
games
this one I'm
once they
definitely
release,
checking out for sure. Because I'll have to finish the first one, and then yeah, this one, like you said, hopefully everything from the first game they improve, bring back what people loved, and then kind of create their own identity. And it really could be like its own little series. Like those fans, yeah, for those fans who want, you know, a little
Yeah,
extra.
I have faith in it. Absolutely. So hopefully it does well. I want it to do well. This game releases on August 30th. Let me know in the comments if you guys are picking up in the chat. Let me know if you guys are picking this up or if you even heard of this game, because just like For Solace, this game's kind of going under the radar. And unless you're like into the content creating or the news about anything and everything Resident Evil like we are, most people probably don't have any idea what Daymare is, honestly. So let me know if you guys know what it is and if you're picking it up, and if you're not, just maybe give it a chance. Watch a trailer, watch some gameplay. It looks like an okay game, and it does seem like it's going to have puzzles similar to those original Resident Evil games that we love. So
Yeah.
maybe check it out. Who knows? So let's move on to something else. This might kind of hit the gray area, and something else that we'll talk about too will definitely hit the gray area, but Stalker 2 has a huge rumor right now. There was a leak on a distributor of the game. It was for, I think the website was called Paleon, and it was a screenshot on that website that kind of showed the release date for Stalker 2. Now, I say rumor because a lot of companies, Walmart, Amazon, they usually put placeholder dates on a lot of the video games, so that way when you pre-order, you have like a placeholder date until they have an official date for when that game's going to release. However, what's weird about this is that this placeholder, quote unquote placeholder, is set for December 1st of 2023, and usually placeholder dates are usually set for December 31st because that's the last day of 2023. So they usually do the last day of 2023 as the placeholder date, just to make sure until an official release date is announced. So it's really weird seeing that Stalker 2 is rumored to have an official release date on December 1st. Now, I want to ask you, Rapid, because I don't know if this kind of falls in your realm of expertise. Do you know anything about Stalker 2? Are you
I've
excited
been keeping
for that
up to
at
date
all,
with
or
it
what's
from
your
the
opinions
start.
on the game?
I know there was some controversy surrounding them at one point, but for the most part, the game looks great. But if I learn anything, screenshots don't necessarily determine how a game is going to finally look. So it could be modified or whatever. But I do have high hopes because I never finished the first one, the very first game. But I played enough for it to feel like a Fallout mixed with like Metro Exodus. It's kind of like that mixed together, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm hoping this kind of, this it's another one of those cases where I hope they kind of just take the best elements of the first game and really just ramp something up that, because it seems like no one's talking about it, yet people are excited for it. So it could be one of those like underrated gems that ends up skyrocketing and blowing up out of nowhere. But
Yeah.
the last
So
thing I was gonna say
unfortunately,
is like you said
oh
with the
sorry. Go
placeholder
ahead.
date. Yeah, because I was gonna mention that right when you said December 1st, I was like, don't games usually get placeholder dates on December 31st? So the first, that could be an official date, could
Hmm.
be a placeholder. Who knows?
Right, and that's why I think it's a little weird. Again, take this with a grain of salt, guys. This is nowhere near confirmation that this is going to be the release date for Stalker 2. Until we get an official release date, we're just speculating here. But if this is true and that is the official release date, that's going to be December 1st. I'm pretty much excited for this. Now, there was some issues going on earlier with this game, and that was due to everything going on between Russia and Ukraine. Obviously, they had a lot going on, so that's why I kind of delayed the release of this game for good reason. Absolutely good reason. Totally understandable why this game got delayed with everything going on. But with all of that going on, it was eventually delayed. And according to the director of the game, it's still intended to come out later this year. Now, we are in August, which means we have about 4 months left to release this game. So now it really comes down to when are we expecting the reveal for when this game's release date's going to be. And in my opinion, I'm thinking, and I know this is like a really repetitive theme, but I'm thinking Tokyo Game Show, right? Like that has to be when this
It's
game
very
gets
possible,
announced for a
but I
release
was
date, right?
thinking Gamescom, which is, a few days from now. But it could be either. But it
Oh
has to
yeah.
be like some sort of event. I don't think they're gonna come out of nowhere and drop a trailer. I'm sure they're gonna, it'd probably be best to reveal it at some major event like Tokyo Game Show. So if that is the case, then yeah, hopefully it
Yeah.
comes out this year and
Absolutely.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too, actually. Gamescom would make sense. And they have to have time to kind of market this game again because it's kind of been dead in the water for good reason, like I said earlier, for good reason, but it's kind of been dead in the water. This hasn't been in anybody's faces. Everybody probably forgot about this game. I see people hitting up the comments talking about they don't know anything about Stalker 2 or anything about Stalker in general. This game was all the hype when it was announced for the Xbox. I think it was back in, what was it,
Yeah, it was a while
2021,
ago.
2020, I think?
Yeah.
It was announced a while back, and it was announced during an Xbox showcase. I remember that. So when it was announced, like it got all the hype because it's like a first-person horror game. So, and I'm all about that. So I'm really excited about it. If you guys are excited about it, let us know in the comments. Really interested to see how this game turns out. And I'm excited if we finally get a release date because I had this on my list as one of the most anticipated games. Of course, I'm a huge horror fan, but this is
Yeah,
definitely one of
same.
my more anticipated games of the year. All right, so I have a
Yeah.
very, very important question for you, Rapid. You ready? Okay.
I played the
Have
beta.
you played Texas Chainsaw Massacre yet? Okay, okay.
Uh,
So
I
what
thought it
did you
was
think
good. I
when you were
mean,
playing it?
graphically huge because I played the first game as well, Friday the 13th. Um, and just the graphical upgrade and whatnot. I mean, impressive as usual. Audio amazing. Love the movies. Game was really good. You can definitely feel that the developers like have a lot of passion and respect for the source material. Um, I just thought it was okay. Maybe it could be fatigue from playing so many like asymmetrical like multiplayer horror games like Dead by Daylight, and it gets to a point where it feels
Right.
repetitive. But playing that game, there was a lot of mechanics that were like at first it was very overwhelming because usually it's like simple like run, repair something, escape. Whereas that game, like there's so much more to it, and the map design was so like different. It wasn't usual map design. Like it really, I think, because I know the game just came out too. Which I've yet to play the full game, but I thought it was like okay. For me, I think it was a little bit of that fatigue, but seen a lot more gameplay from it after, and even seeing people play the full release. It looks like a lot of fun. Um, but Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing to me that stands out is when developers are handled an IP and they actually take care of it. You know, they actually respect the source material, the original movies, and the fans that actually built up that IP in the first place instead of catering to people that don't really know that genre or know that IP. So looks like they did a great job.
Yeah, no, I agree with you for the most part. I think I'm having a lot of fun with the game. I didn't play the beta, so I got my first experience with the game literally yesterday. I played all day yesterday. Played today with actually someone's in the chat right now that I played with. I played with some friends today. So I've been playing a lot of it. I really love the game. I'm a huge Dead by Daylight fan, which I'll talk to you about that in a sec if you're a big fan of that. But I'm a huge Dead by Daylight fan, and I played the hell out of the Dead by Daylight game. I honestly, I can't count how many times I played that game this year. Like I probably put that game on at least like
Wow.
I would
It's
say 15
addicting. It's
times a
addicting once you
month.
get into
Like
it.
I just love the game that much. It is. But what's interesting about Texas Chainsaw is that I actually so far, and maybe it's just because it's a new feeling compared to the Dead by Daylight game, but I actually really like my experience with Texas Chainsaw. I think I'm having more fun with it as of right now. But my concern is, unlike Dead by Daylight, where they consistently add new monsters to kind of change up the gameplay. For example, Xenomorph is
Yeah.
coming in like 2 weeks from now. So you got a new killer coming out, and they always consistently have new killers that have new perks that completely change up the experience, the gameplay experience totally. My concern with Texas Chainsaw Massacre is there really longevity up for this game? Like, is this game going to last where it's going to feel different every time I play it? Like 4 months down the road, a year from now, am I going to find myself coming back and playing? I know they're going to add new characters, but it's kind of hard to add new
Yeah, I was
killers,
thinking
right?
if, because like you said, Dead by
So,
Daylight, I mean, they do so many collabs. You can add some wild characters that completely, change the entire gameplay. Because one match you'll play against Ghostface, but then the next match you play as Michael Myers, and the way you play and the killer plays is so different and completely changes the game's dynamic. Whereas Chainsaw really, the most they can do, I mean, I don't know like too much about like the lore like that, but they really could make original characters. But um, that's what I've seen is it's so unique and different from Dead by Daylight in a lot of ways. But you don't want it to feel too samey once they start adding more characters and they're like, oh, we got to add all these different perks and whatnot to kind of copy that. They always want to be their own thing. So like you said, months down the line, I don't know like how. I mean, I know like new maps is probably guaranteed, but outside of that, yeah, I don't know
right.
really.
Yeah, I mean, outside of maps, I don't know how much more changes they could do to this game to make it feel like a different experience, and that's my concern. I love this game, and if you guys haven't played this game yet, if you're a fan of Dead by Daylight, you'll definitely like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in my opinion. I think it's a really good experience. It is on Game Pass day one, which is nice. So if you have Game Pass already, that's a free experience. Well, quote unquote free experience right away. So if you have Game Pass, definitely pick it up for sure. But yeah, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope the longevity of this game, they find ways to kind of innovate the gameplay to where it feels different. Maybe try to create unique modes.
That's crazy. I was just
I
thinking the
don't
same
know.
thing.
Like,
So
other
you
than
think
just
alike
changing the
right there,
maps.
because I was like, a lot of games like
Yeah.
maps take a while to make. Like I think people forget maps take a long time to make because you're not just making a map. You're not just throwing in trees and buildings. You actually have to design the game around the map, so it's actually playable and fun. So that takes a while. Characters and ability like that takes a while. Whereas new game modes, you really can take what you have and the assets there and just make something crazy. Like a fast paced mode. Maybe take one of the maps that take place like the farm that takes place during the daytime and make it a nighttime map, and then add like
Yeah.
I don't know more like you can really like do something fun. Kind of like this is random, completely different genre, but like Rocket League, where it's like they take the core game, but then they add all these different game modes around it, like because it's a soccer game, but you can also play basketball or ice hockey, where it's the same game, just it feels different. You can play the same maps over and over and over, but the new game modes actually add more to the game and make it feel, fresh and different. So
Right. I agree. That's what they need to do is they need to innovate it with like different similar game modes. That was a really good example with Rocket League. I'm not a Rocket League fan. I know there's probably a lot of people in the chats that that are Rocket League fans. But no, that's a perfect example though, is that if you can take the core concept of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and then kind of build modes around Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that's probably the perfect way of how you're going to build up the game and add longevity to it. So yeah, I
yeah, I'm
agree with
wishing
you,
the
man,
best for the game
completely,
too.
for
It looks
sure.
like a lot of fun. I'll definitely get it at some point because looks like I'm missing out. So I'll definitely have to check it out.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Oh, yeah,
You
for
get
sure.
it
I'd be
and you
down.
want to play sometime, hit me up for sure. So, and Dead by Daylight, I already told you, I'm a
Oh
sucker
yeah,
for Dead
that's
by
my
Daylight.
go-to.
So
I
you're
love that
feeling Dead by
game. So
Daylight, I got you. So, all right. So we'll move on to the next one. I'm kind of gonna breeze right through this one because this one is it's not getting a lot it's not getting a lot of good feedback right now, and that is the fact that Walking Dead has a new game that is officially announced. They don't have a release date for it. It is called The Walking Dead Destinies. Technically it's an action adventure game, so I don't know why we're covering on this episode, but we are because Walking Dead is zombies.
yeah,
And yeah, so we're gonna cover it anyways. But so basically, the Walking Dead Destinies is supposed to focus on the first 4 seasons of the show as you portray different characters from the Walking Dead show. So you get to play as Rick, you get to play as Daryl, all the favorites from the show, and each character has their own abilities, and you get to visit like really iconic locations like the farm, the prison, Woodbury. And what's really unique is that you can actually change the storylines that actually happen in the show. So a perfect example that they showed off in their teaser trailer is that instead of actually having Rick die when he, oh, well, spoiler, I guess. Um, let me say that first. Walking Dead season 2 spoiler, I think. But instead of having Shane die in season 2, where Rick confronts Shane and they're in that kind of standoff position, Rick actually has the ability to where you can actually change it, and Rick dies and Shane becomes the leader of like the Walking Dead crew. So it seems like a really cool concept. However, when this teaser trailer came out and we saw the gameplay and all this, and
yeah, I
it
saw it.
looked rough. It
Um,
looked bad.
it's I'm
Yeah.
a sucker for gameplay. Like, there's a degree where graphics matter, but if your gameplay is so
Mm,
fun and engaging, graphics, everything else, I can just throw out the window. Um, but yeah, it just seems like such like the concept is amazing. I don't think anyone can disagree. The concept of a what if story is so cool if it's done right, and you actually give the players a choice instead of like the
right.
developers making their own what if story. Then the players are just playing through that. It's like give players that choice to like really create their own story and just don't make it linear. And yeah, the graphics and gameplay, people I've
Oh,
seen
yeah.
say it looks like a mobile game. I don't think it's that bad, but we really just have to see how it plays out because yeah,
Yeah.
if it's engaging,
Kind of.
um, and just somewhat fun and cool, and actually, I think the biggest selling point will be like player freedom. Like, is this going to be extremely linear, or are we actually like some Telltale level type of like freedom where
I hope it's Telltale level. I mean, I see people talking about it in the chat, but Telltale Walking Dead was actually really fun. Like, sure,
yeah,
the gameplay was non-existent, but the story was really cool actually. Like, Lee is one of my favorite like characters in the Walking Dead universe, and he was only in one game. So, like, it's I absolutely love the Walking Dead Telltale games. So if the story's somewhat similar to that level, then sure, I guess I'll check it out. Um, I think my bigger concern, other than the gameplay, something else is that apparently Game Mill Entertainment is actually the studio behind doing this game, and I looked up because I didn't know who they were. So I looked up, try to see what other games it came out with. I couldn't find anything of noteworthy, other than one game, and that is the Skull Island King
uh,
Kong game coming out later this year, which is also the like game that's getting the most like heat right now after
yeah,
it showed off a gameplay trailer a little while ago. So it's not it doesn't really have a lot of good things going for it. The studio behind it doesn't look like It's a great studio. The gameplay doesn't look the greatest. Maybe, like you said, if they kind of make a really good story similar to like the Telltale games, maybe it has a chance to go somewhere. Maybe, I don't know. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
I'm
I'll
probably
definitely
tapping out
wait
of
when it
this.
gets
So
closer to release. Maybe I'll get, because I'm a huge Walking Dead fan. I played even the really bad Overkill's The Walking Dead when that came out and that was abandoned. I played, yeah, I played that. I've played all the side
oh
games and
no,
whatnot. It was rough,
you
but
poor soul,
yeah,
you
even
poor
a game like
soul.
that, like it's like they had such, because I actually just watched this documentary behind the entire development past. It makes you so sad because it's like these games sometimes it's like the worst games have such amazing concepts, but the execution is just like, where did it go wrong? And I'll get a little bit more to that later on a particular Resident Evil game, but it's just, that's what makes me the most sad. It's like such a good concept, but it's like, give it to the right studio and give them the right budget, and like there's no way it can be successful. But something like this, the Walking Dead game,
Right
it
now.
depends. I guess I'll have to see when we get closer to release.
Yeah, I mean, show me some more narrative moments that you can actually change in the universe. Like, if you show me that there's like at least like 20 big moments that you can change throughout the first 4 seasons of The Walking Dead, then that sounds pretty killer to me. Like, okay, you got my attention. Show me like how much you can actually change with this game, and I think that would be pretty cool. Because so far, the only thing they showed off that they could change with the story is the Shane surviving
Yeah, I
and
hope
Rick
it's not a
dying in
case
his
of like
place.
it's just
So,
a character
but
replacing another character and that's it. Like I hope like that happens, but also it actually affects the narrative and
yeah.
other characters are affected and like it completely changes the whole narrative.
Right. Like, I would like to see how Shane meeting the governor works out because, like, I mean, I feel like they're similar personalities. They might be best buddies if it gets to the point where Shane meets the governor and he's like, "Hey,
Yeah.
what's up? Well, what's up, buddy?" So they might actually get along. They're both pretty messed up, but we'll move on to something else. Now, this is definitely crossing the line in terms of what is actually survival horror. I technically probably not at all survival horror. This is more so action, first person shooter. But we're going to talk about Modern Warfare 3. And here's why. We're going to talk about the fact that Modern Warfare 3 officially announced that they are bringing back zombies, which, if you didn't know, we haven't seen zombies since Vanguard. We didn't get it last year. We didn't get it. Oh, wait. Yeah. So last year's 2022. So, yeah, we didn't get it last year. We got it back in Vanguard in 2021. So we are officially getting zombies, and it's actually interesting what they're doing this time around because apparently this is going to be the biggest zombies map in the Call of Duty universe. And it's supposed to be very similar to like an open world map. It's supposed to be a really, really big open world map compared to a lot of their other zombie maps. And yeah, they are talking this game up. There's going to be more reveals on this probably at Gamescom, but they're really, really talking this up. So this might be a really, really big zombie experience to check out.
Yeah, I'm
When Modern
excited.
Warfare
I've been
3
a
releases.
huge zombies fan since I was a kid. I think my first zombies game was Black Ops 2. For me, because it's from what it sounds like, if anyone's played Black Ops Cold War, there was a mode called Outbreak, which was the same thing. It was an open world zombies mode that was added much later down the line. So it sounds like it's basically just going to be that, but a
Yeah.
larger world. So for me personally, as someone who's put hours and hundreds of hours into Cold War, I'm not like, I'm excited, but it just kind of sounds like the same thing. Just, you know, Sledgehammer, and I think Treyarch's actually developing the zombies here as well, just like previous games and whatnot. But
Yeah. 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 Treyarch. I think
yeah, they're
Treyarch
developing
specifically is
zombies,
developing the
Sledgehammer
zombies mode, right?
multiplayer, Infinity Ward campaign. But yeah, for the zombies mode, I mean, I hope it turns out good. Because Vanguard Zombies when it launched, you know, it was pretty
It
bad.
wasn't
But
good. It's alright. Yeah, you can say it
yeah, I'm
was good.
hoping to just take what they learned from Cold War and Vanguard and make something special. You know, bring back zombies. Because for me personally, I love like World at War and Black Ops 2, BO1. That era of zombies to me is like
Oh
the
my
best. Even Black
gosh.
Ops 3. Um,
That that first zombies mode that we got, like the very first time we got zombies in Call of Duty, it was actually a pretty good like experience. Like I actually really, really liked it. That was
yeah,
back
well,
in
I think
like
the
what, the
first
first Black
zombies
Ops,
was
I
World at
think,
War.
right?
Yeah, and then BO1 and BO2. But I
Oh, Word of War.
love
That's
that
right. Yeah.
atmosphere. The atmosphere in those games was so much to me like better because it actually felt like survival horror. Like it actually felt like scary and intense and with all the fog and the zombies glowing blue eyes. Like I really miss the era of zombies. Hopefully they go back to that one day.
Now they mentioned something about I didn't get so I there were some changes that was brought up recently with this game, and maybe you know something about this, and maybe the people in the comments in the chat can let me know what this was about. I didn't get a chance to kind of research this a little bit more before this podcast because it was last minute. But what's the whole deal about everyone saying something about a DLC being like the game is a glorified DLC
So
at launch or something like that?
MW2
Isn't that what a lot of people were talking about?
because usually when a COD game comes out, they rotate developers, and also every game every year is like different. So
Mm-hmm.
one year you get a Black Ops game, next year Modern Warfare, next year something else. So MW2 just came out last October, November, and so the fact that
Right.
we're already getting a direct sequel, and the biggest thing that's making people think it's DLC is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first ever COD game where all of your guns and bundles from MW2 will actually carry over into MW3. So people are saying
Carry
it
over.
sounds like
Yeah.
MW3 is, doesn't that mean they're basically going to have the same weapons, the same skins and all that? So the only different thing really is going to be the campaign and zombies. And so people are saying it just seems like a selling point for the campaign just to finish the trilogy. Um
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it's
yeah.
Activision. Is anybody
Because
really
even the
surprised? I mean,
trailers, they're
like this
heavily,
should
even
be
the
no shock.
event was like
What's
heavily emphasizing, and MW2 was heavily emphasizing like story beats and whatnot. So it's
right?
COD, what can you expect?
Yeah, and that's I know it's sad, but that's typical, expectable. You expect it when it comes to Activision. I remember last year they also told us that they were going to skip next year, this year, 2023. They were supposed to skip this year with a COD game, and somehow, like earlier in this year, all of a sudden there was rumors and leaks going around that there was actually going to be a COD game in 2023 now. So that makes me concerned that this game is definitely going to
Yeah,
feel
my
rushed.
theory
But we'll see how it goes
was
on
all the
release.
content that they planned for MW2,
Um,
because MW2, for at least for me, because I played it since the start, it felt like it started slowing down content wise. Um, and other than the event and some other small
yeah.
things, it doesn't feel too different compared to launch, at least for me. So my theory is all the content they had planned for MW2, they just said, screw it, let's just make the sequel, and then made that the full game. So but there are a lot of good changes, like when you
Absolutely.
really
Yeah. No, I agree.
become like a geek when it comes to Call of Duty, like certain things like slide canceling and all that, like they're really
Yeah.
taking feedback. It sounds like, hopefully, right? Hopefully. So I guess I'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes. So I believe that game officially releases November 10th of this year. So we'll find out soon. And like I said, supposed to be more game footage. Hopefully we'll see more zombie mode at Gamescom on August 22nd. So before we move on to the poll question for the week and the Q&A, one last thing that I added to this this breakdown of all the different news and rumors going on is that Capcom actually officially announced what they're showing off over at the Tokyo Game Show later this year. I believe that's at the end of September
Yeah.
September 21st, I think, somewhere around there. So Capcom is actually they actually announced what they're going to talk about at that event. And of course, you got some more Street Fighter. They're probably going to talk more about the DLC. Exo Primal was on there. Probably going to get another crossover. Maybe we'll get Leon or Chris in Exo Primal or something like that. But the more interesting thing that I want to focus on, and actually kind of two things that we'll talk about, but the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that Resident Evil 4 Remake, the VR mode that we were shown off, all the way back around the game's initial release, we saw a tease there, and then we saw it again over the summer, I think, at Summer Game Fest, if I'm not mistaken. So we've seen a little bit teases of it. And apparently we're going to get more, another update, because we still don't know the release date for that, but we're supposed to get more information on Resident Evil 4 VR, and that's going to be at the Tokyo Game Show. So first off, tell me what you think about Resident Evil 4 Remake, and are you interested
You don't know my
at
thoughts
all
on the
with
remake
VR
itself, the game?
Mode? Yeah,
So
sure, go for
loved it. Loved it, everything about it, talked about before. There were some things I didn't like. unpopular opinion. I still prefer the original for so many different reasons, but that does not make the remake bad in any way. The remake, there's so many different like snipers just like scoping on the remake. Like people don't like this, people don't like that. For me, I love the remake. I really think for a modern game, were there a lot of changes? Yeah, but they were faithful in a lot of ways. And the gameplay to me again is always the selling point. I know people go after the story. I'm like, when has Resident Evil ever had a good story for being like the lore is very intense and very
How dare
like
you? Resident Evil, best story
the
ever.
lore has always been, it's always been intense. I'm heavy into the lore, but like story, like if you really think about the Resident Evil 4 story, guy hired by the president goes to Spain, tracks down the daughter, saves her. It's simple story. And so in the remake, when people are like the story sucks, I'm like, it sucked in the original too. Even all the beloved games, even Seven, yeah, like
It's the exact same story.
yeah, like that's what
I
I'm
don't.
saying. They
They
didn't really like
barely
do
made
anything.
any
If anything,
changes,
RE4
so.
remake added more lore because if you actually read all the game files, they dive more into Luis's grandfather and whatnot. So if anything, 4 built up the story and added more lore and answered some questions. But love the remake. I think I gave it a 9 out of 10 when I talked about it. Um, absolutely love the game. I don't have a PlayStation
Nice.
2 or VR2 headset. Kind of want to get one just for RE4 remake, low key. But um, I'm thinking my prediction
Yeah.
is they're gonna reveal the release date at Tokyo Game Show because to me, I'm thinking from a business standpoint, it would be repetitive to announce that they're making a VR version, come out and drop a little bit of gameplay, and then come out again and drop some more gameplay and not give a release date. Like it feels like third time's a charm. This is a release date, and it's probably gonna release either at the end of the year or sometime beginning of next year. That's my prediction. But I'm excited because if anyone here has never played Resident Evil in VR, especially the original Resident Evil 4 in VR, you would think like, oh, I played that game 100 times. It's no different. It completely feels like a different game. It's so much fun.
Oh my god. I don't have my own VR. Honestly, I'm kind of motivated to get a VR too as well, like you said, just for Resident Evil 4 remake. I never completely played through Resident Evil 7 Biohazard in VR, but I had a friend that had it on VR, and I played the like beginning portion of it, which was a goddamn nightmare, honestly. That game was horrifying on VR, and I don't think I could play a full game on VR like if it was like similar to the horror level of Resident Evil 7. That being said, Resident Evil 4 remake, there's a question that's going to come up soon that we'll talk about in just a moment, but Resident Evil 4 remake is definitely not nowhere near in the same level as horror as Resident Evil 7. So I don't know. I kind of want to get the VR2 just to play it, but I guess I have to see when this game releases because it's weird they haven't talked about release day at all. You mentioned, makes sense for Tokyo Game Show. Excuse me. You said it makes sense for Tokyo Game Show. I agree. So hopefully we're officially going to get an announcement. Something else that I think could be announced at the Tokyo Game Show, and you can let me know your opinion here, but where the hell is that Separate Ways DLC at? Like, I mean, we've been talking about that since the game's initial release. I felt like there's been like data leaks all over the place regarding achievements on Steam and stuff like that about this DLC package. When is this getting announced, and when are we actually getting this?
My
DLC?
money is still this
do you have
year.
an idea of when you think it might be?
I don't know. It has to be this year. There's no way it's not because I mentioned before. So, when Resident Evil 8 came out, they had no plans for DLC, but the game was so loved and people wanted more from the castle. Because that was the biggest criticism is people said the game should have just focused on the castle. That was the best part of the game. And so like I think like a month after they announced they're working on DLC, and that came out I believe a little over like a year and a half later, maybe just like a year. And they were able to reuse some assets, but they had to create a lot of new assets, like the character models rose. I mean, there was so much more they had to create. Whereas with the RE4 remake, there is no doubt in my mind that they had Separate Ways planned before the game even came out. So,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. They have
just
to have.
assuming they've been working on it before the R4 remake even came out, it has to like it can't take no more than a year. Um, unless they're just going all out, unless they're just like, because the original Separate Ways was in depth, but a lot of it did feel very like samey. So I'm wondering if they're just going all out because the R4 remake, I'm sure they knew it was going to sell well, but it sold a lot better than I assume many of us really thought. So they could just be going all out, which is why it's taken longer. And they're really trying to make sure, because if they put this thing out and it's buggy or there's some just any little thing wrong with it, because they've seen people picked apart the RE4 remake, any little thing people picked apart. So I'm wondering if like they're really just taking care of every little aspect of the DLC and they're just waiting. But my money is still this year. I'm thinking Tokyo Game Show, even though it doesn't say on the website. I'm thinking it's going to be like a secret like drop or something. Like they're gonna hit us because if you've kept up with all of their showcases, they always like reveal something like here's VR, and then at the end they're like, wait, but we have one more thing, and then they show like worldwide reveal trailer, Capcom logo, and then you're gonna hear Ada, and people are gonna go crazy. So my money's still on this year, and if not, I'd be so surprised because
It has to.
I guess that's a whole different topic, but pushing it to next year just seems like just too long. Well, I was going to say Resident Evil 9 is actually rumored to be announced next year, which makes sense because usually they announce the mainline games at PlayStation State of Plays, which are in June. So if theoretically they revealed Separate Ways like early next year and then revealed it seems too close together. Because Separate Ways isn't the only DLC we're getting. We're also getting Mercenaries content too. We're getting more characters and maybe even a new map. So I'm thinking this year it has to. I'd be so surprised, but and it's not confirmed. Obviously, grain of salt, but to me, it just makes the most sense.
Right now, I agree. I agree with you completely. And the thing is if they announce Separate Ways at Tokyo Game Show, that gives them till December to release it. And that will hold us over till, because they're announced, well, it's rumored that they're going to announce Resident Evil 9 next year. And then it's supposed to release in 2025, because I think Death Golem is the source that you're thinking of, right? About talking about releasing a game every 2 years.
Yeah, it even made sense to me.
Something like that.
Because I even thought that a little bit before he put out those tweets or whatever. Because Capcom starts the next mainline. They start working on the next mainline game slightly before their current mainline game is finished. So like Village, they started working on that before RE7 came out and whatnot. So they definitely were working on RE9 before Village came out. So assuming they started on that in like 2019, 20-ish, somewhere around there, maybe 18, maybe a little 18, 19, somewhere around there, I'd say. It'd give them plenty of time to put out the next game. And supposedly it's their most ambitious. So I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm excited for that game.
Yeah,
it's gonna piss off someone no matter what, though, because either they stick to first person, you're gonna have everybody pissed off. That's not the modern third person view, or they're gonna do third person, and people are gonna be pissed they didn't stick to the first person trilogy. So Capcom's in a really dark place when it comes to Resident Evil 9. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, so we'll move on to our poll question, and then we'll go to a Q&A. If you guys want to start leaving questions in the chat, we'll go through the entire chat, find whatever questions are in the chat, and get those answered for you. I'm going to go over some questions that we had over last week when I did a non-live version of the Survival Horror podcast. I had viewers leave in the comment section what they wanted to see me answer this week. And, of course, since we have Rapid here, he's going to answer these questions too, because I'm going to make him. So... okay, so let's start with the poll question. So I'm gonna pull that up on my channel too while I bring that up. But earlier this week, I actually asked the question because I seen a lot of issues coming up in comments whenever I talk about Resident Evil 4 Remake, and I got a lot of heat about what I said about Resident Evil 4 Remake, and that's how it's not a true survival horror game. I think it's survival horror. I just don't think it's true survival horror. But that is the poll question of the week I posted was, is Resident Evil 4 a true survival horror game? So before I get to the results of that poll, I want to hear your opinion. What do you think? Do you consider Resident Evil 4 and even the remake, either one, do you consider Resident Evil 4 and the remake a survival horror experience, or at least a true
I've been
survival
waiting for
horror
the day to
experience?
answer this. This is my first time saying this publicly, I think. Pretty sure. I love
Wow,
RE4.
okay,
I am
nice.
a hardcore RE4 fan to the heart. Like everything down to just being the geekiest person you can think of that knows everything about the game. I even have like the old guidebooks. I mean, everything. Love the game to death. The old game and the remake. I love RE4. It scared me when I was a kid. You know, terrified me. Their generators, etc., etc. To me, both games, the remake and the original RE4, to me, period, is not survival horror at all. Like, I would say you could argue, right? Because people may argue, okay, well, there's resources, right? You have limited resources. Okay. Well, you could say the same about Call of Duty. Well, you run out of ammo in Call of Duty, so that means you have to be careful about how much ammo you conserve. Does that make that a survival horror game? Right? Because you're, doing night missions in the dark. Does that make it survival horror? Not necessarily. To me, survival horror really is like the original games, like Silent Hill, Resident Evil, where they're not running simulators, like Outlast. And I love Outlast, but they weren't games where you were just running, hiding. Like you had resources, but very little. Especially the original Resident Evil games. You didn't run around finding herbs left and right. You didn't find, unless you were playing on easier difficulties. I had that balance of like true survival horror where you couldn't kill everything. You play the RE1 remake, the 2002 GameCube remake on, there's a bonus mode. It's called like True Survival or something like that, which is basically hard mode with some extra things. That is like pure survival horror. Like you cannot kill everything. You really have to watch your ammo because you could kill everything. You get to your first boss, you're done for. You don't got the ammo, you don't got the resources, the healing. Oh yeah, someone said Amnesia the Bunker. That's a perfect example too. I don't know if you play that game. That is one of the best like survival horror games I played in a very long time because going back to Resident Evil 4 on topic, RE4, you can kill everything. That is the intent of the game. And it's not giving you a choice necessarily. You can run past a majority of the enemies in the game. But if you sat there on professional, and every time I play it now, I play on professional, even the remake, it's not like professional difficulty where I gotta watch, how much ammo I use. You can kill everything. No matter what difficulty you play on, you can kill everything in the game. To me, that's not survival horror. Technically, you're surviving, but you could say the same about Halo, COD. You're surviving against the odds. That's not survival horror to me. Same with the whole idea of like, is it action horror? Is it horror? Is it action? To me, RE4 is a horror game with action elements, whereas something like Resident Evil 5 is an action game with horror elements, where there's like sprinkles of horror, but it's an action game. Whereas RE4 is horror, but action elements, right? You got the roundhouse kick, you got the suplex, the one-liners. It kind of breaks, not necessarily immersion, but that's what makes it so fun is the cheese and whatnot. And it's just not meant to be like Silent Hill or the original 3 RE games where you really have to, watch how much ammo you use or whatever. I mean, obviously more certain ammo types like shotgun ammo and sniper ammo is scarce, even like magnum ammo. But overall, I mean, you can run through that game and kill everything. So, to ultimately get back to the question, it just, I've seen both sides. People say, yeah, it's survival horror. To me, it's not survival horror at all. That's not what makes survival horror. I've always considered RE4 to be horror action, which sounds goofy, but horror action. It's a horror game. Just yeah, because as a kid, I mean, it was terrifying.
Action
Even
horror,
like
yeah.
little things like the boiler room where you have all this smoke and you have those ganados with the gas mask. I mean, even that as a kid, it was even on the back of the PlayStation 2 cover art. Just looking at that as a kid, I was like, that looks scary. It's terrifying. So it's just, to me, that's just not survival horror. Is it a horror game? Yeah, it has action elements, but is it survival horror? Are you playing it like, oh, I gotta keep track of my ammo? Not necessarily. So
Yeah. No, I agree with you completely. So I'll say what the results of the poll was. You're not going to agree with it. But I'll say what the results of the poll was. And then I'll kind of go over my reasoning about what I think it is. The question was, do you view Resident Evil 4, both versions, the remake and the original, as a survival horror game? 72%, and this is about 1.5k voters,
Oh
and
wow.
72% of it said absolutely. 28%, 28% said that hell no, it's not a survival horror game. So a lot more people feel that Resident Evil 4 is a survival horror game. That being said, I actually did a video very recent on my channel, 10 key traits to what makes a really good, perfect survival horror experience. And in that video, I actually mentioned a game that you brought up and some of our guests brought up in the comments. I actually brought up, I use Amnesia a lot as an example of a true survival horror, a recent survival horror experience that I felt like is really identified as a survival horror game. And some of the traits I talked about, I mentioned how, like, you know, a survival horror game doesn't need all of these traits, but it needs a good portion of these traits in order to be classified as a survival horror game. Otherwise, you kind of fall into realms of action horror or a stealth horror, stuff like that, like Outlast. I don't consider that as a survival horror. I think I watched this on someone actually explained this perfectly. I want to give him a shout out. Mild Conviction. He actually explained this perfectly in his video, how Outlast is considered like more of a stealth horror, and stuff like Resident Evil 4 is considered action horror. So I think, me personally, I feel like you need to have a lot of different traits to be classified as survival horror. Some of the things I can mention is stuff like limited resources, inventory management, atmospheric horror, which I think is the most important part of a survival horror experience. You have to have the power of choice. You have to be able to choose. Like, people don't realize this, but I feel like a big part of survival horror experiences, you need to have the ability to kind of choose how you want to play the game. And I know that seems weird talking about survival horror game. Like, if you think of the Resident Evil games, you don't immediately think that they need to be like made in a way where you can like choose how you want to go about it. But what I mean by that is, let's take a look at Resident Evil 1, for example. Resident Evil 1, even the remake, you can look at that one too. So Resident Evil 1, that game, basically every single time you encounter a zombie or a zombie dog, you have to decide one of two different options every single time you encounter one of them. And that is either fight or flight. You can run and save your ammunition and you benefit from that, but then you also have to deal with the consequence of, if you re-enter that hallway, you're going to have to fight them or run past them again. Or you can do fight and you can take them down, but then you're in this situation where you use ammunition, and then the remake of Resident Evil 1, you have to go up against a Crimson Head potentially if you don't burn the body. So it's like you have to choose. Like, I feel like the power choice is extremely important for survival horror experiences. But like I said, I think it's a lot of different traits, and it has to have a majority of these traits to be classified as a survival horror experience. I mentioned inventory management. Silent Hill doesn't have inventory management at all, but that is probably one of the biggest survival horror experiences out there. I don't know if you agree with me there, but Silent Hill under Resident Evil is probably the biggest survival horror franchise. Am I right? Wrong? You know? Yeah. So I feel like a game like Silent Hill, it's just pretty much a pause menu, and you can just pick up as many items as you possibly want. So there's no real inventory management, but you know, the more traits that a survival horror or a game has that fit that survival horror mold, the closer it gets to that perfect survival horror experience. And that's how it kind of get into that window. And I feel like Resident Evil 4 and the remake for Resident Evil 4, they are missing a hell of a lot of the traits. You know, Resident Evil 4 definitely pushes the idea, like you mentioned, how you have to fight and kill all the enemies. You don't really run past enemies too often in Resident Evil 4. You can, but honestly, you have enough ammunition to where you can go guns blazing like hell against all the different enemies. And what's really weird is that you actually get to collect ammunition from bodies after you kill enemies, which is really weird for a survival horror experience. And some of the traits that Resident Evil 4 have, I think, push it too far away from the survival horror genre. I'm going to leave it at that because I have a whole video where I talk 30 minutes straight of just why Resident Evil 4 and the remake is not a true survival horror experience in my opinion. So I don't want to go 30 minutes long talking about that. But overall, I think survival horror is a specific genre. Resident Evil is always the game that everybody looks at for the survival horror genre, but doesn't have to have every single trait of a Resident Evil game. Silent Hill doesn't have inventory management. Resident Evil does. Does that mean Silent Hill's not a survival horror? No. And I think that's the most important thing. You just have to have the right traits to kind of push it towards that survival horror genre. And I don't think Resident Evil 4 remake or the original game has enough.
Yeah, because Resident Evil 4 to me it feels like it's not the case, but this is what it feels like. Is they're developing the resources you get around the game, which means you basically again can use all your ammo, kill everything in the game, and just run through everything. Whereas like the original, the first RE1 remake, the game is developed and the enemies are developed around the resources you get. So it's the opposite. So like you said, the original, even just the first 3 games, more so the first 2, because even three is when they started to go a little more in the action route. Because even on that game, when you play on hard, you get like, you know, an assault rifle and whatnot. But like the first 2, right, it's not linear, so you're not just running straight, run past everything. You have a choice, so you can kill something. And your first time playing, you don't know if you're going to backtrack to a certain area. But your first playthrough, you're running through back and forth areas, and it's given the player a choice indirectly. Like, okay, I can kill this enemy, so I never have to deal with it again if I keep running through through this area. Or if I leave him here and save ammo, I keep running back here. So now you're not risking your ammo being used. Now you're risking your health. Because if you mess up, you get grabbed, you get bit. So I like that choice. And to me, that's also what makes survival horror, is that, like, kind of what you said, where it's like that choice, giving players a choice. It's either you want to risk your ammo or you want to risk your health, choose one or the other. Especially like, later, like in the RPD and Resident Evil 2, that you get that one room where you get, I think it's the crank, and there's like 5 zombies in that room or something like that. Or maybe I'm thinking of the remake, but choices like that, where it's like you run through certain areas and you got to give the player a choice rather than just, kill everything and you're set. Another example too is Resident Evil 0, where they take away the item box in that game, which hurts the game more than anything, because the item box works so well is because you're running through, back and forth from area to area. It's the perfect substitute to store your items, run back and forth, but it's not enough to where it's a cheat code. Because if you have a full inventory, you have to go back and you have to know the layout of the mansion, instead of just, oh, let me run to the next room and store these items. Like, you have to know the layout of the mansion. And if you run back to the safe room and you didn't kill an enemy in that area, guess what? Now you're going to deal with it. So it's always giving you that choice. It's never a one-time thing. And I love the RE1 remake too, because later in the game, they switch it up and they replace zombies with hunters. Now it's like, okay, now you're going to keep, doing what you're doing and run past these guys, or are you really going to, have to deal with them? So the player choice, it's, to me, that's what, whereas like RE4, there is no player choice in that sense. It's, you don't deal with the first village and think, well, I can skip this area, because in the remake, you can actually skip the first village fight if you shoot the bell. Which is a cool little Easter egg, but at the same time, it's like, technically you're surviving, but what makes the first village fight any different from, a Rambo movie where you're this action hero fighting off waves of soldiers? It's not very different.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, Resident Evil 4 remake kind of feels like a third-person over-the-shoulder mode of zombie Call of Duty, sort of.
To me, it's like Resident Evil 4. Better way to summarize it is Resident Evil 4 is, it's kind of like that meme where it's like Leon's not locked in the room with Ganados. They're locked in there with him. Like, he's the threat, and that shouldn't be the case. That doesn't take away from Resident Evil 4 being an amazing game. I love both versions of RE4. But if we're talking pure survival horror,
I absolutely love it.
Leon's the action hero. He's going to win. There's never a moment other than towards the end of the game when Sadler takes control where you're like, oh my God, my hero. Whereas like older survival horror games, like the original Resident Evil 1, you're like, I hope my heroes survive and get out of this mansion. Are they going to die? What's going to happen to them? Like, you actually have that fear for the characters. In Resident Evil 2, you're like, dude, the city's going to trash. My heroes, they're alone. They're one of the few survivors. There's that different level of fear where it's like an RE4, like, yeah, I'm Leon, there's no fear. here to take the president's daughter back home. You know, there's no fear factor there. So
No, I agree with you. I'm glad we're on the same
no, because
page.
I've
I was
seen that
concerned
too.
we were
So
going to be
it
battling it
surprises me that
out.
so many people think, which is
But
I respect people's opinion. People think I totally respect that. But for me
oh yeah,
personally, it's not survival horror. Just in general, you know, it's action horror, horror action.
no, I agree. All right. So with the poll question out of the way, guys, we're gonna go into a Q&A. I saw some of you guys hitting questions up already in the chat. Feel free to post them again, or I'll get to them eventually. But you guys can start leaving some questions in the chat if you guys have them for us. Could be personal questions, could just be about what we like, blah blah blah, whatever you want to ask us. But let's just first start with the questions I had left in the comments last week. And we're gonna start. I'm gonna have you answer each of these questions first, and then I will follow up with my answer. But we're gonna start with who is your favorite? Oh, actually, hold on. Let me pull up the who asked these questions so I can make sure they get a shout out. Okay, so first question for you, Rapid. Who is your favorite protagonist in the Resident Evil franchise? That is asked by Benjamin with AM8142. So
Favorite protagonist, Leon S. Kennedy. And it's not because, you know, I like Resident Evil 4. I think him as a character, he's actually very complex. Because if you've read the books, the mangas, seen the animated movies, you know, I know people don't like the current, or at least like in Vendetta, where he was like more depressed and more just he became more of an alcoholic. I think that actually fits his character because you think about everything he's been through, nothing for him has really paid off. And he even acknowledges that. Minor spoilers for Death Island, he acknowledges that, where it's just like no matter what we do, they just keep coming back. There is no resolution. It's like, this is our lives now. We just keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting. There is no happiness. There is no end of the road. It really is just, this is the world we live in. Kind of like the Walking Dead universe, where that's kind of how they are. It's just like, there is no such thing as a cure or whatever. It's like, this is the world we live in now. So I like, you know, how he starts off as a rookie cop, because the lore for people that don't know is why he was late to work. Yeah, why he was late to work was I believe his girlfriend broke up with him. He was drinking. That's why he was late. Shows up and he has no like crazy military training. He's just the basic rookie cop training. Just happens to be lucky and survives, and that experience built him up. Gets hired to be under, you know, government protection, and you know, rest is history. RE4 or 6. So him as a character, which I think people, because a lot of people are like, oh, I love Leon as a character. I really do like his character development. I think it's just suiting for him, and it fits. And he's just a good guy. I mean, you know, anyone he works with, he's helpful. Just tends to take. He's a great leader. So definitely Leon.
Nice. So my favorite character actually is Chris Redfield, of course. So there's a few different reasons why Chris is my favorite protagonist in the Resident Evil franchise. The first reason is just because he was my first experience to Resident Evil. So when I was a kid when I played the original game. I don't know why my parents let me play this game, but they did, and I'm so glad. I played Resident Evil. The director's cut was my very first ever game. That whole god awful soundtrack, but I played that game and I fell in love with the character Chris already. Now my love for him didn't grow until we got to like Resident Evil 5. Like I played Code Veronica. I loved his character in Code Veronica, but once we hit like 5 and 6 territory, and yeah, I know 6 gets a lot of heat, but I'll go over that just a little bit. But Chris's character just has been on a roller coaster throughout the entire universe. When you think about it. Like, if you look at the entire series, he's been on one crazy, insane roller coaster. And you see some really highs for this character and see some really lows. So you see him as just, you know, a cop in the original game. You see him growing to the point where he has this sense of honor, where he wants to fight Umbrella and take down Umbrella. So he goes to Europe, I think, at the notes in Resident Evil 2 say he went where?
I believe so, yeah.
It was Europe, right?
If I remember correctly.
I think so. So he went to Europe to go figure out what he had to do over there. And then you see his character develop more, leading in between Revelations and Resident Evil 5, where you see him kind of dealing with the loss of his partner, who potentially, in his mind, may have died. and he was kind of suffering from that, and he was kind of battling against that, and he just had this overall commitment to just battling BOWs his entire life, to the point where he loses so much to BOWs. He loses, spoilers for some really old games, by the way, but he potentially thinks he loses Jill, he potentially thinks that he loses Jill. He finds out he didn't, but he did have to go through that for 6 months, I think it was the time frame between Resident Evil 5 and when Jill went missing. He lost his entire squad at the beginning of Resident Evil 6. He loses Piers at the end of Resident Evil 6. This guy has been on a roller coaster, and no matter what, he just continues to battle BOWs. All the way up to the point where you see him still training BSAA agents and the jump forward to Village DLC, Shadows of Rose. You see that he's still training agents. So he's still involved with the battle against BOWs. And it's just so admirable about how he just consistently just wants to fight these monstrous creatures so that way the world can be safe. And I admire that, and I respect him.
Yeah, Chris is, I'd say if I had a second, definitely Chris. Especially, I love the way Village ended, and just, you know, I get he was written, in my opinion, poorly in Village. His actual attitude in the game, to me, was very suiting, because in 5 and 6, he's like this, you know, crazy dude that's like, gotta fight BOW, he's gotta keep pushing, he's screaming, yelling, just over the top. Whereas in Village, he's just kind of like, whatever, like, just another day, you know, find BOW. It's like he's got that chill, just kind of, just that post, just sadness attitude where it's just like, whatever, like, just another day on the job. And just everything, he's such a broken character, and to me that's what makes characters more complex sometimes, especially in worlds like this, like Chris. I would argue he's more broken than Leon is, where it's just, you know, he's lost more people, and especially Jill, you know, they've been together since the start. And if you play the Lost of Nightmares DLC, it really adds, and you feel, you're just like, you know, they really were partners together, and losing someone that close, you're just like, it makes sense why he's the way he is. Even if he's careless, if you put yourself in his shoes, not saying everyone would act that way, but you lose someone that close, and you're in a world like that fighting VOWs, you just kind of develop that addiction, which is what Chris had. Yeah, the
dude had to go through a lot. Like, he really did. And Dark mentioned in the comments, I'll bring that up real quick. He mentioned in the comments how I forgot he also lost his team in the DLC for for Resident Evil 7.
In that DLC, every single soldier,
a lot, man.
The first moment, because you had the one he walks up to and he gains hope. I'm gonna save you. Guess what? Lucas is there. He's got the other one with the saw above his head. I'm gonna save you. He dies. And you got the one in the laser room. I'm gonna save you. He dies. So it's like every time he gets a bit of hope to save a soldier, they end up dying. So yeah, he's very broken.
Yeah, so it's no wonder why he turned out the way he did in Village. I mean, yeah, like, he made some stupid decisions.
Yeah.
You know, writing wise.
Just his attitude, and what he's been through. If you really understand that history, you're just like, yeah, he's been through a lot.
Oh, for sure. All right, here's another one for you. What is this is from, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, Javi Rod, and he's asking, what is your favorite non-horror game franchise?
I have a few, actually. There's obviously a couple of Capcom ones, like Devil May Cry, Street Fighter. Ones I used to be heavily into is Bethesda RPGs, so like Skyrim, the Elder Scrolls series, Fallout, the Souls games, Dark Souls, Elden Ring, all those. A big one too is Doom. I love Doom. Played all the Doom games. Doom Eternal is one of my favorite games.
Oh, nice.
Pretty much just those ones. Yeah, I don't really have like if I had to choose a favorite, probably be between Devil May Cry and Doom. One of those.
Nice. Okay. I'm going to say a very hot take. I'm actually not a big fan of Devil May Cry games. I keep trying to get into them. I just can't. I even try to play the most recent one. I know it's a good game. I can feel that.
Yeah, I respect that too.
Can't get into it for some reason. Okay, so my favorite non-horror gaming franchise, this one's extremely easy for me. It's Kingdom Hearts. I love Kingdom Hearts. I'm a huge fan. My dog's names are
I love the first two games. Never played the third one, but first two, childhood
yeah.
right there.
Oh, Oh my god, I love the Kingdom Hearts games. Like I said, I named my dogs Roxas and Kyrie. They probably would be named after Resident Evil characters, except for, Leon, Chris, kind of basic names. No offense if your name is Leon or Chris, but I just felt like for dogs it was basic names, whereas Roxas and Kyrie felt more unique. So yeah, definitely Kingdom Hearts is probably my favorite video game franchise outside of any horror game franchise. So let's go to, this is another question from the same person, Javi Rod. He's asking, and you can name all three if you can, or just name one, whatever you can do. What are your top three
this
horror
one's
movie
tough.
franchises?
Probably Halloween, in the Conjuring series. I don't think I could think of a third one off the top of my head, but yeah, those two definitely the first that come to mind. Conjuring series and yeah, that one.
Nice. I would say my number one would be Scream. I love Scream. My number two would probably be Child's Play. I love the Chucky movies. And my number three, I think I'm gonna go with Saw. I know it's more of a gory horror franchise. It's not really scary horror, but I just really love the twist that they do at the end of every single movie. So I would probably say Saw is my third.
Yeah, especially the first one. I love the first movie.
I think maybe. Oh yeah, the first two are amazing. Then they kind of go downhill. Horror. Saw X looks like it's gonna be fantastic, so I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, Child's Play and Scream. Okay. If I had a top five, oh yeah, those definitely go on there. Love those two. I used to watch the first two like hundreds of times when I was younger, and I was like a kid when I saw those two. I was like, why do my parents let me watch this? And Scream. I love the last few Scream movies too. So especially the first one.
I'm gonna be honest. I did everything like horror related and gory related when I was a kid. I went to Halloween Horror Nights. I don't know if you know what that is. I went to that when I was a kid. I watched horror movies, played horror games. Great parenting. I'm gonna raise my kids
I was like 3 or 4 when I saw.
I turned out fine.
I know it's not really a horror movie, but that's when I actually saw my first live action. I think that was my first time being exposed to Resident Evil. Was Resident Evil Apocalypse in theaters. I was like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
When my parents took me to go see that, I was like, it's like I was a kid.
Make me feel old.
I think I was like 4 or 5 when I played, because my first Resident Evil game was RE3. I was like 4 or 5, so.
I think I was 6.
Oh wow!
When I played Resident Evil 1, if I remember correctly.
Oh, so you were young playing horror and watching horror movies.
Yeah. I was a young little boy playing horror games for sure. So next question. All right, this is coming from Lexinator111, and she's asking, what survival horror game are you most excited about releasing later this year?
It's an indie game called Echoes of the Living, which is rumored to come out Q4 of this year. That one I'm really excited for, simply because hot take, I love the modern RE games, first person, third person, but I am dying for another fixed camera game. And so this seems to be giving me exactly that. Just kind of that, like, not that RE engine, but that RE1 remake, like engine graphical style feel type of gameplay. If anyone is looking for classic Resident Evil, I'd check that game out. Echoes of the Living. That one I'm definitely excited for.
I think it reminds me of
because I think it takes place
right?
in like a mix, like indoors in the city. Like, so like RE2, RE3, yes. So
I forgot about that. I have like a list of games I'm definitely playing this year. I don't
have
that game
that which is so random because it's such like a smaller, like under the radar indie project, but I'm super excited for that one.
Yeah. You need to hit up my DMs once you know the release.
For sure. I'll let you know.
I don't forget about that game, so you gotta help me out here. Okay. All right. So the one I am most excited about. I mean, the easy answer would probably be, me saying Alan Wake 2 or Silent Hill 2, but just because I want to shine a little light on, probably a smaller game. I'm drawing a blank of what the name of it was, though. I have it in my notes. Let me pull it up because I know it's something I'm really excited for. I want to make sure. Oh, well, there's Daymare 1994. I want to shine some more light on that. I think that game's going to be great. I would probably say Daymare. Oh, that's it. Ad Infinitum. Hopefully I'm
I
pronouncing
haven't heard of that one
Ad
yet.
Infinitum. Ad Infinitum. It's a very small like indie studio. So a while ago they made like a smaller version of this game. I think it was like just like a small little thing that they put together, and it got a lot of like attention. And they decided to make a full game. The studio decided to make a full game of it, and it's coming out later this year. I don't think it has an official release date yet. Let me check. Actually, in my notes, I have it coming out September 14th, so it does have an official release date now. So September 14th, it's a first-person horror game. I don't know if it's classifies based off of our description of a survival horror. It's probably very Amnesia the Bunker-ish, which I think that's an old-school survival horror game in first person. So if you like Amnesia the Bunker, I think you guys will probably really like this game. My only concern with that game, though, is that I played Unholy recently, and I was hoping that was going to be very similar to Ad Infinitum. After playing Unholy, I hope it's nothing like Ad Infinitum, because Unholy was pretty bad. So hopefully, but yeah, it's probably the game I'm looking forward to. Echoes of the Living, I probably would have picked that if I remembered it. That's a good one. But easy answer.
Oh yeah, Silent Hill 2. Yeah, if whenever that's coming out, I can't wait for that.
If it comes out.
I'm excited for that one. It's probably second, or that one would actually be first in general. That's probably the next like big horror game I'm excited for. So Silent Hill 2.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I would say it's probably I'm excited for that one. I don't know if that's coming out
it'll probably be next year.
I felt like it was a cop out saying that. We'll see.
Yeah.
I think so. If they're smart, they probably would push it next year. What is? Okay, so this comes from. I love this username, Lisa Trevor 8686. What is one survivor horror? Okay, well I felt like we kind of answered this, but we'll do it anyways. What is one survivor horror hidden gem that you think all fans of the genre should play? Let's focus on ones that have already released. That way we make it a little bit more interesting. So it has to be a survival horror game that is out right now that you think
that's
a lot
easy.
of fans haven't played. That you think
this one's weird. I mean, it's an indie game, but it blew up a lot more than even I thought. And I think even the developer thought himself. But My Friendly Neighborhood. I don't know if you played that one yet, but I looked at it.
I have.
And the only reason why I bought it is I was looking at the reviews and everyone is like, it's like Resident Evil with Sesame Street mixed into it. I was like, eh. And I remember like skimming through some people's videos and I was like, it don't really look scary. But then I reminded myself, like, horror really doesn't scare me no more. I think I'm kind of fatigued by it. Especially the first RE1 remake. So I was like, I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
Ended up being like top 5 favorite games of the year. I mean, if you like, not necessarily like, because it's first person, but if you guys like that old, just, I guess more like RE2 remake, because even the map feels stripped straight out of RE2 remake. If you like that old, just slight backtracking, well actually major backtracking, but like a whole hub area where you're backtracking and solving puzzles. And the puzzles in that game, hot take, are way better than any puzzles that have been in the last, like any recent RE game in the past like 5 years. Like even 7-2 remake. I mean, the puzzles in that game, some of them actually had me thinking. Because, you know, I usually like figure something out pretty fast. That game actually had puzzles that actually had me thinking. So between the puzzles, there's actual resource management. So you can't just go around spraying your shotgun, or even your pistol. Like you really have to, you know, watch your resources. It has a mechanic like RE1 where instead of burning bodies, you tie them down. Because if you run back areas, they just respawn. And they respawn in different spots too. So it's not guaranteed that, oh, they're always going to respawn in that one spot. Sometimes they'll switch it up on you.
Go and keep
for
talking,
sure. But yeah, between the resource management, the puzzles, I mean, the map design, I mean, My Friendly Neighborhood is, the only thing I would say is it's not scary. There's maybe one moment that I find scary, or at least like slightly in that like horror area. But if you don't care too much about getting scared and just shaking in your boots, then My Friendly Neighborhood is easily one of the best survival horror games out there right now, at least like indie wise. There's also like things on the side too. Like if you like the whole idea and like, because a lot of Resident Evil games, one of the biggest parts about them is the replay value. And unlike a lot of indie horror games, My Friendly Neighborhood actually has replay value. So there's like cheat codes you can find, there's secrets, there's like a whole lot you can do. So definitely that one
Nice.
easily, which is surprising because I remember I saw it like a demo once and I was like, it looks cool. But then when it came out, I was like, oh, I remember this game. And just looking at it, I was like, it'll probably be something I'll play like once and just like not care about it too much. But no, it's one of my favorite games of the year.
Nice. I would probably say for mine, I am going to go. I don't know if this really counts as a hidden gem. Okay, I'll say two. I'll say Tormented Souls. I don't know if that really counts as too much of a hidden gem. I don't think a lot of people know about it. Tormented Souls, it's very... It released, what, a year and a half, 2 years ago, I think? 2 years. I think it's 2 years. Released about 2 years ago. Tormented Souls is a very old school survival horror game. I will tell you straight up, the story's not...
I played it, beat it, love that game. I'm glad you brought that up. I love that. That's another one, too. It's a very good one. Love that game.
Yeah, I love the gameplay of the game. It's very old. It's like Silent Hill meets Resident Evil, almost, kind of. I really, really like that game. I think the story kind of sucks, but for the most part, we don't play these old school survival horror games for the story. We play it because we like that feel and vibe that we get from them. So I would probably say Tormented Souls would be my number one. If I had to pick one that is probably a little bit more known, but it's older, like really old, and it's really hard to get a copy of this, I would probably go with Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. It's a very old school game, and it has one of the coolest mechanics I have ever seen in a horror game. And that is the fact that you are, and this was on one of the games I want to see get a remake, but it has this cool sanity meter that's kind of similar to the Amnesia sanity meter, except for whenever it fills up, you start imagining stuff happening. So like the game will actually play tricks on you as the player. So it would like make like roaches crawl on the TV screen, or it would pretend to turn off the game to make you think the game or the TV turn off. So it would actually play tricks on the player to make them, because you're going crazy, and it will break the fourth wall to kind of like
I'm gonna have
play
to
tricks on you.
I'm gonna have to check that out. Actually, I've never heard of it. That sounds crazy.
It's so good. I'm sure you can probably get on emulation somewhere, but as far as actual getting a copy of it, it's extremely expensive, and it's only released on one console, and that is the GameCube. But
kind of sounds like what the Village leaks sounded like before the game came out, about like hallucinations and whatnot. Because to me, that's always been such a cool concept that I feel like a game hasn't, like a modern game hasn't fully utilized, and a game like that would be perfect, where it's like,
I think so. It's one of the games I want to see get a remake.
We can only hope.
I don't think it ever will. But I think, I love that game. I think that's a fantastic hidden gem. Okay. So, all right. I think that's all the questions from last week. What is this 5 hidden gem? Okay. So let's move on to what we got going on today. All right.
Yeah.
You say you play Dead by Daylight, right? Who is your... Well, I don't really play this as much, like at the Killer as much, but
surprisingly, I don't ever play as the Killers. I play as Leon, my boy Leon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Same for me with Chris Redfield or Rebecca. As the Killer, for me, I love playing as Ghostface just because he crouches and like sneaks on people and stuff, and just stalks them and just stares at people in the corner until he builds up his meter, and then he goes and fucks them up. So I would probably say Ghostface is my... Occasionally
I'll play custom games with friends, and like if I end up being the Killer, I'll play like Nemesis. Well, it's all like Resident Evil usually. There's I have Ghostface, and I forgot the other one I had, but yeah, no, Ghostface. He's, to me, is like one of the like most fun to play against, because like it's a whole like sneaking factor that's such like, it's like, I don't know, mechanics like that in games. I like when games just like switch things up like that. That's why I said like Dead by Daylight's one of those games where it's like every game is so different. based on who you're playing against.
Oh, I agree. I love that Dead by Daylight does that, and hopefully Texas Chainsaw does something similar.
Yeah.
Finds their own formula for that kind of stuff. Let's see. Oh, that was from 3Pick 2 Easy. Let's go to Dark Attack. He asks, "What are your favorite horror games beside Resident Evil?"
Oh
favorite horror
man, there's
games beside
so
Resident Evil,
many
go.
because I played so many throughout my life.
I know. Let's try to do top 3.
First one that comes to
so
mind.
That way we don't go too crazy.
Well, if we're talking just in general, first one, which is a recent one, Outlast Trials. I played the heck out of that game. Love that game. Evil Within, the first one. Which is surprising because the second one I played more, but because the first one was actually directed by Shinji Mikami. I don't know, something about I mean, it was clunkier. It was just, it had more issues. The story was more confusing, but I don't know, just the atmosphere, the creature designs. I mean, the first game is just, I don't know, I love the first one. And third, I would probably have to say like Dead Space probably. There's just so many. Yeah, because I'm also thinking of like Alien Isolation, which to me has the best stalker AI in any horror game. Amnesia the Bunker was good.
I agree, yeah.
I'd probably have to go with Dead Space for top 3. So Evil Within, Outlast, and Dead Space.
All right, for me, yeah, this is good question because I'm stumped. I would say the first thing that comes to mind, probably Silent Hill would be the first one. Probably Silent Hill 1. I really like Silent Hill 1. Maybe it's just because I just replayed the first one. So Silent Hill 1 will probably be on that list. I know Silent Hill 2, a lot of people love that one. But if I had to pick one of them, I'll pick Silent Hill 1. I would throw out...
It's hard, especially when you played so many. It's such a hard list to come up with.
I know.
I
feel like I'm forgetting some really amazing ones that I'm just drawing a blur on right now. I don't know. I mean, I remember really, really loving the Dead Rising
if you kept it as horror, it's just more like...
I know that's more... Yeah, if that's horror, I mean, it's horror.
Yeah, I'd say so.
It's horror.
I'm trying to think too. I feel like there's so many I'm missing too.
I don't know. I know there's so many I'm missing. I want to give a shout out to the original Outlast game. That game really got me. I want to throw a shout out to, like you said, Amnesia the Bunker, Alien Isolation. I really like the Amnesia the Dark Descent. I don't know. I think if I had to just pick one, I'll just go one because I'm having a hard time narrowing it down. I'll just say Silent Hill 1 just so we can move on.
Evil Within 1. That's my number 1.
Let's see. Scroll down all the way too far.
A lot of good looking indie games on the rise. I definitely agree.
Very cool. Okay, I'm caught back up. So let's see. Have you all played any puppet combo games?
Yeah, I played one. I completely forgot what it was called.
What is that? Help me understand what that.
Oh,
I'm actually lost.
It's like this. I don't know if it's a genre or if it's the I don't. Let me see. I'd like no. It's like these like VHS scary type. Oh yeah, they're developers. Yeah, they make like these. I guess they're like retro. I don't even know how to explain like how to describe it. There's one called Stay Out of the House. The
Yeah,
best way to
that's
describe, I
one
don't know
that
if you ever
Lewis
played
and
Manhunt
Cooper
by
worked in.
Rockstar. It's such a weird comparison,
Yeah,
but
yeah, I know Manhunt.
it's nothing like that. But like the vibe, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, it's they're good. That's State of the House is yeah, State of the House is a good
Interesting.
one.
I have to check this out. Yeah, I
Yeah, it's
don't
like these retro like VHS style
have to
games.
look into that. Lewis said favorite non-horror for me. I think we already answered this. He said for him it is the Souls. Yeah, we already answered this. Favorite non-horror for me was Kingdom Hearts. Look, I think that's what's a game in any genre you're addicted to that you never thought you would like?
The Souls games for sure. First ever Souls game was Dark Souls 3.
Yeah.
I was like, this is not for me. I am getting whooped. Um, but it was just the mindset because I love those games because they kind of put you in the mindset where it's like, how much are you going to tolerate this? Are you going to keep dying over and over and keep coming back? And so to me, the mindset was just like, because I'm so stubborn when it comes to games like that. Like I'm not putting this game. If this game thinks it can beat me, no, I'm beating the game. And so it was just that mindset. And I hated Dark Souls 3. Like I was so annoyed. I just kept getting frustrated. But by the time I was done with it, like top 5 favorite games of all time, and then end up going back to 1 and 2 and Sekiro and Elden Ring. So
No. No, that's a good one. Because I didn't think I was gonna. Elden Ring was kind of my first introduction to. Well, I remember playing Sekiro, and I like Sekiro, but Elden Ring was probably the one that really got me like stuck in the genre. So I really like that. I would. I don't want to take your answer because Elden Ring it would probably be a good one for me. I didn't think
yeah,
I
I
would like
thought
that
I'd hate
genre
it,
at all.
but shocker.
Yeah, I would probably say if I had to pick something, it would probably be. I think it would be I guess if I had to pick something, I would just go. I don't know.
That's a hard one to think
These
about.
questions keep stomping me. Yeah, Elden Ring is probably my go-to. I would probably say Street Fighter 6 might be one that I didn't expect to really like as much as I did. I'm not a really big fighting game person. I like the Mortal Kombat games, but mainly
Yeah.
just because I like the story that they tell. When it comes to the gameplay of fighting games, I'm really not a big fan of them. But Street Fighter 6 did something that actually really did a good job pulling me in. They actually introduced those modern controls, what made things easier for the combat. And for someone like me who sucks at fighting games, having the modern controls make
Yeah.
it easier for me to do specials and stuff. I actually really, really like. So I guess the easy answer for me would probably be Street Fighter 6, just because I don't like the genre at all, really. I really like that game, so it was easy to
That's a good one.
kind of
It's so
get
ironic
along with
too,
that one.
but if I wouldn't say Souls, Resident Evil, because it wasn't like a lot of people's story is like growing up like, oh yeah, I played Resident 1 and I
Interesting,
played
yeah.
2 and 3 and I love the series. For me, 4 was the only one that like I loved. And it wasn't until my dad's friend, I believe, he ended up one because I was a kid. This is years ago. So before I had my own phone and before I knew anything about the internet, had no idea Resident Evil 5 was a thing. I just love 4. I didn't care to go back and play the first 3. I didn't care. Is there a 5? Is there a 6? I just wanted to play 4. And I get this
Yeah,
birthday gift opening up in Resident Evil 5. I'm like, there's a 5th one?
that's cool.
I played that, and ironically, as a kid, I did not like RE. Like, I hated RE5 as a kid. It was just, I'm gonna sound dumb for saying this.
It's crazy. This is coming from the guy that has RC in
Yeah,
his
like
logo.
I
Like,
I don't know, I just didn't like it. Then 6 came out. I loved 6. It was just I had such a weird introduction into the series because I started pre-ordering the games after that. Went back and played the originals and all the spin-offs and everything. So ironically, Resident Evil was a series I did not think I would love. I thought 4 was like gonna be that one off game that I would just love and that's it. But more games kept coming out and just got to a point where I was like, well, I gotta play all of them now. I gotta go play the remakes. Gotta, the first remake, RE0, the original 3, the spin-offs, the Wii games. So yeah, Resident Evil
Nice.
is, yeah, it's wild
Cool.
history.
All right, last question. I don't see any more in the chat after this one. It's probably a really fast one to answer, and then we'll probably start wrapping up here. So, do we play any VR games? Personally, I'll answer this real quick. I've only played one, and it wasn't on my own personal device. It was on a PS VR. My friend had it, and I played the Resident Evil 7 introduction, like the first 20 minutes of the game, I would say, and scared the hell out of me. So that's my only experience I have with the
For
VR game so
me,
far.
what have I played? It's the one I'm thinking of. I can't think of the name. Well, I guess the easiest one, Resident Evil 4. I've yet to finish it, but yeah, and that game is because I don't get motion sickness easily, like at all. I remember like putting that on for the first time. I was like, this is gonna be easy. Like barely an hour, and I'm already like getting dizzy because I'm in my room, like, I'm thinking I'm Leon, I'm roundhouse kicking. I'm like, this is kind of crazy, but and I get like VR is not really meant to be played for that long, but oh, Phasmophobia, that's what it was. Um, yeah, Phasmophobia is the
Nice.
first one.
That's one I want to play
It's crazy
on
because
VR.
like
I heard good things
like I
about
said, for
that.
the first time, I was like, it can't be that different, right? Like, I don't get scared by horror. Like, that game doesn't scare me, horror games don't scare me. Now, VR completely, like, you feel like you're actually there. It's wild. So, yeah, Phasmophobia, that one I played a bit of, and
That's cool.
Resident Evil 4 I never finished, but which I will at some point. But yeah, I want to get more into VR because I know there's a lot more VR games out there that
Nice.
are engaging and intense. So,
Yeah, if I ever played a VR game, it would be Resident Evil 4 remake, and then probably go back to Resident Evil 7. That's about the extent of the VR games I want to play, and I probably will play. But
yeah, Phasmophobia.
Phasmophobia, is that how it's Phasmophobia? Phasmophobia, okay. Yeah, I gotta try that one out. All right, but that's pretty much all the questions we have. So, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Survival Horror Podcast. This will air every single Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. So if you guys want to tune in next week and join the podcast, I don't know who will be on the show. Maybe Rapid will come back. Maybe someone else will be on the show. We'll see who shows up. Whoever wants to show up can just show up. But before we get to the end of the video, Rapid Crafter, where can our viewers find you at, and what's going on?
You guys can find me at
What teams do you have
youtube.com
for your channel?
/RapidCrafter or twitter.com /RapidCrafterYT. For the future, just like I said, my biggest thing is creating some of the best Resident Evil content possible, something fun, and just trying to do new things that's never been seen before. Some bigger reviews. Reviews usually come out and they're simple. I want to kind of take that to the next level and be more creative with that. I got a green screen, so maybe do some creative things with that as well. Some VR stuff as well, especially with the remake, VR coming out probably this year.
There you go.
Yeah, just a bunch of new series and just doing some creative. I got a whole bunch of creative ideas, doing something different. So I'm excited, and excited for the future of the series because that's one of the best things about being really a horror content creator in general is there's just so much, especially this year. If you're a horror content creator in general, you are being fed this year, even next year. I mean, there is so much coming out, so much
I
to
know,
talk
right?
about. Resident Evil, there's always so much to talk about because that was something I was kind of scared of becoming a Resident Evil content creator. I was like, is this going to get stale quick for me? Because Resident Evil isn't like Call of Duty where it's yearly, but I mean, every single year there's something. I mean, the RE1 board game just got announced. I mean, there's so much content constantly coming out. So yeah, as a horror fan, definitely,
Nice.
probably, in my opinion, one of the best years in a long time, like since the early 2000s to be a horror fan, at least for gaming. I mean, even
Oh, I agree 100% with that. Probably, honestly, one of the best years in
yeah,
gaming in general, actually. But survival horror and horror in general, there's just so many horror games that came out already, and so many more still coming out. Just on this episode alone, we listed
and that's
off
not even
6
everything.
different
There's so
big
much
horror
more
games.
that we didn't talk
So,
about. So if you're
yeah.
a horror fan, perfect time, no doubt. And for movies too. I mean, you saw movie, Scream
Cool.
movie. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a whole lot to look forward to. So I'm excited.
Nice, man. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. It was a huge, huge honor to have you on this episode. Hopefully, you'll come back whenever you want to come back. You're always welcome on the show. All you have to do is hit up my DMs. Hey, I'll be there next week, following whatever. I'll have you on anytime. You are a true inspiration when it comes to the survival horror genre content creators out there, because I watched your channel before I started getting involved in this. I learned a lot of stuff from you. So it's a true honor to have you on the show, and I was so excited when you said yes that you're going to be on the show. So
For sure. Thanks for having me. This is fun. I love being on podcasts. This is super fun. And I love the way you like host it and do everything. So, you know, definitely, in my opinion, my personal opinion, one of, if not the best podcast hosts I've seen in the community. So
thank you. Hopefully it gets better.
The first live show is really good. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for the future.
Yeah.
See what you got cooking up. So.
Cool, man. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in on this episode of Nerd Space Survivor Horror Podcast. I am with Nerd Space Games. You can find me at youtube.com/nerdspacegames. RapidCrafter here. You can check him out over at RapidCrafter, his channel. And again, guys, it means a lot that you guys tune in. Leave in the comments if you guys have more questions you want us to ask on the next episode of the Survival Horror Podcast. And I really appreciate you guys being here. So take care, and I will see you guys on the next episode of the Survival Horror Podcast. Bye.